حي على الفلاح.
Among the signs of an accepted Ramadan is that the situation of the worshipper after Ramadan becomes better than it used to be. If you show signs of improvements in your acts of worship, in your deeds, or in your steadfastness after Ramadan, then know for certain that your fasting has been accepted by Allah. On the other hand, if you turn back to the way you used to be before Ramadan, then know for certain that Allah has not accepted your Siyaam. What is amazing is that during Ramadan, when you see people who fast and pray at night, who spend in charity and worship the Lord of the worlds, then no sooner has the month come to an end, but their nature changes completely. And they begin to have a bad attitude towards their Lord. So you see them neglecting prayer and avoiding righteous deeds, committing sins, and disobeying Allah in many different ways. How terrible it is by Allah when people only acknowledge Allah in Ramadan. After the end of Ramadan, the people are divided into various types. Two of the most prominent of which I will describe here. The first type are those whom you see in Ramadan striving hard in worship. You never see them, but they are prostrating or standing in prayer or reading Quran or weeping so much that they remind you of some of the worshippers among the Salaf. And you even feel compassion for them because of the intensity of their efforts and striving. Yet hardly has the month ended before they go back to negligence and committing sin, as if they were prisoners of that worship. So they turn their attention to their desires and become negligent and commit sins which they think will take away their distress and grief. But these poor people forget that sin is the cause of doom, because sins are like war wounds, one of which may turn out to be fatal. How often has sin prevented a person from saying La ilaha illallah when in the throes of death? After spending this entire month with faith, reading Quran and other acts of worship, these people then backslide. These are the occasional worshippers who only acknowledge Allah on certain occasions or at times of calamity and distress. Then after that, there is no more obedience or worship. What a bad habit that is. The worshipper prayed for something that he wanted, and when the matter was done, he neither prayed nor fasted. I wonder, what is the point of worshiping for a whole month if that is going to be followed by a return to dishonorable ways? The second type are those who feel distressed at the departure of Ramadan because they have tasted the sweetness of being safe from sin, and the bitterness of patience became insignificant to them because they came to realize the true nature of their weakness and need for their master, Allah, and their need to obey Him. They fasted in a true sense and stood in prayer at night out of love. So when they bade farewell to Ramadan, their tears flowed and their hearts were broken. Among them who were burdened with sin hoped to be freed from sin and ransomed from hell, and to join the caravan of those who are accepted. Ask yourself, my brother, which of the two groups do you belong to? By Allah, are they the same? Praise be to Allah. But most of them do not know. You should know that the dearest of deeds to Allah are those that are continuous, even if they are little. The Messenger ﷺ said, O people, you must do whatever you can of good deeds, for Allah does not get tired until you get tired. The Muslim should make Ramadan an opportunity to turn over a new leaf by repenting, turning to Allah, persisting in worshipping Allah, always being aware that Allah is watching at every minute of every hour. So after Ramadan, the Muslim should continue to obey Allah and should avoid sin and evil actions as a continuation of the way he was during Ramadan and the things that he did, than to draw closer to the Lord of creation. Undoubtedly, the purpose for which Allah created everyone was to worship Him alone, with no partner or associate. This is the ultimate purpose and the highest aim, which is to attain ubudiyah, being a slave of Allah in the truest and fullest sense. This was achieved in the most beautiful manner during Ramadan, when we saw people going to the houses of Allah in groups and individually, and we saw them striving to perform the obligatory prayers on time and to give in charity, competing with one another in doing good deeds. Undoubtedly, righteous deeds are among the acts which bring a person closer to Allah at all times. And the Lord of Ramadan is also the Lord of Sha'ban and Dhul Hijjah and Muharram and Safar and all the other months. That is because the worship that Allah has enjoined upon us includes 5 pillars, one of which is fasting, which is for a set period, which has come to an end. But there remain other pillars: Hajj, prayer, and Zakah, for which we are answerable to Allah. We must perform these duties in the manner which is pleasing to Allah, and we must strive thereby to fulfill the purpose for which we were created. The pious and sincere believer should fear Allah and strive to obey Allah at all times, persisting in his taqwa and always striving to do good. Call others to Allah, enjoin what is good and forbid what is evil. For the believer, his days and nights in this world are storehouses, so let him see what he can deposit in them. If he deposits good things in them, it will testify in his favor before his Lord on the day of resurrection. If it is the opposite, then it will be a disaster for him. We ask Allah to save us and you from that loss. If Allah has accepted a person's Ramadan and he has benefited from this period of spiritual training and has remained steadfast in obeying Allah, then he has joined the caravan of those who have remained steadfast and responded to Allah. This standing firm should continue from one Ramadan to the next, because the Prophet ﷺ said, from one prayer to the next, from one Ramadan to the next, from one Hajj to the next, this expiates for whatever sins were committed from one to the next, so long as you avoid major sins. The believer should join the caravan of those who stand firm and should board the ship of salvation from the time when he reaches the earliest stage of discretion until he draws his last breath. He should remain in the shade of La ilaha illallah, enjoying the blessings of Allah. This religion is the truth, and the way in which we steadfastly adhere to it in Ramadan is that with which Allah honors us by the bounty of His giving, His gracious blessing, and His great favor, so that we might continue to pray Qiyam and to worship Him after the month of Ramadan. Do not forget, my brother, that Allah has blessed you with i'tikaf, and Allah has blessed you with giving charity, and Allah has blessed you with fasting, and Allah has blessed you with dua, which has been accepted. Do not forget, my brother, to take care of these good deeds and the support from Allah, and do not let them be wiped out by bad deeds. So strive to cultivate goodness and happiness on your way, and to keep company with those who remain steadfast in Islam, and to seek Allah and His Messenger and the home of the hereafter, where it'll be said to you, receive glad tidings of paradise as wide as the heavens and the earth, prepared for the pious, for you responded to the call of Allah. O seeker of good, continue, for Allah has some people who will be freed from hell. And O seeker of evil, desist. And you responded to the words of the Prophet ﷺ, whoever prays at night during Ramadan out of faith and hoping for a reward, his previous sins will be forgiven. And whoever prays at night during Laylatul Qadr out of faith and hoping for reward, his previous sins will be forgiven. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in fact encouraged us to fast 6 days in Shawwal, the month directly after Ramadan, so that we will gain the reward of fasting an entire year. Ramadan is definitely not the finish line, and the Lord of the month of Ramadan is the same Lord for the entirety of time. The deeds we picked up today should not end tomorrow. Our deeds should not come to a close with the closing of Ramadan. We must continue, and through this steadfastness is our true success. Hold well onto your actions after this month, and let not the end of Ramadan signal the end of your worship, but rather a new beginning.